Hello everyone, this is the Trawler broadcast. I want to thank all of our cast and crew across these old rocks. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. Hort, for fighting those hermit crabs, I take my cap off. Akira, thanks for wrangling the wires in that storm. And Victoria, it takes a brave soul to test the depth of the ocean with both feet. And now, for today's broadcast. It was a dark and stormy night in 7th month, 109. Even a greenfin would know it was suicide to go onto the water with 11-foot storm surge. But two fishermen with more faith in a rumor than sense in their heads did just that. However, what Mads Matson and Jan Locker managed to catch will leave you unnerved and dying to know more. Listeners, welcome to the Trawler broadcast. As my longtime listeners will know, I myself have been known to engage in a reckless act or two. Allegedly known to if any of my partners are listening. But even I wouldn't go into a near hurricane on the rumor of a cove only accessible when the tides were at their zenith, even if said cove was supposed to be chock full of Corsetti. For those unaware, Corsetti are an incredibly elusive find, thought only to traverse the open ocean. Researchers have long suspected the Corsetti breeding grounds were in shallower water, as juvenile specimens caught over the years seem to have underdeveloped swim bladders as opposed to mature Corsetti. Sadly, this is still speculation, but with a price of more than I make in a year per kilo of Corsetti in just the meat, not counting the alchemical components and properties of its gallbladder and teeth, and the luxury of a Corsetti hide slicker, many a fisherman would do many a thing to land a good catch of Corsetti. Listeners, on the old rocks, a Corsetti skin coat is the closest thing to generational wealth you can find. Warm, waterproof, but still supple and easy to move in, even after years of hard use. Okay, maybe I'd have gone out into the storm to search. I am matrimonially required to state that that was a joke, dear listeners. Anyway, back to the epic voyage of 29-year-old Mads Matson and 57-year-old Jan Locker. According to what I can track down, Mads had been given a juicy secret spot tipped by an old barnacle while drinking one night. As anyone knows, any fisherman worth their salt and tackle guards the good spots with life and limb. This was no ordinary secret fishing spot. No, Mads ended the night out the cost of several pints, but gripping a grimy napkin map to a Corsetti colony that the barnacle claimed they'd reliably fished for years now. Why share the location of this alleged treasure trove cove? Who knows? Mads had been quoted as saying the barnacle was too old for the voyage and had no one they liked enough to leave it to. And Mads was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. To this day, neither Mads nor Locker have ever let slip the exact location of the cove, except to Carcer investigative authorities, so, I guess the barnacle had good intuition. The trick, Mads told a reporter immediately following their discovery, to gain access to this cove was that they needed the right combination of tides, keel depth, and wind speed. Locker had the boat, a beautiful little craft of only 20 feet named the Belligerent Hall. What a fitting name for these two, right? And Mads had the map. And both of them had the gall. Now, they just needed the right circumstances, and with a near hurricane-level storm brewing off the coast, they knew their time was nigh. In the dark of the night, Locker and Mads crept to the docks and unmoored. No small feat in the storm surge that battered the surrounding crafts like tub toys. They kept the Belligerent Hall's mast collapse, the canvas safely out of the wind's terrible reach, and did their best with a small running motor and 2 long oars. Soon, Outside of the harbor, the sea's true fury was unleashed upon the duo, and they lashed themselves to the ship with deck lines. Going overboard in a storm like this was a death sentence for certain. Neither Mads nor Locker will give more than the vaguest hints of a location to any reporters, but Locker has been quoted talking about lining up signal lights on the mainland with a special set of magical lights that Mad had affixed in a specific order along the belligerent hull's bowsprit. Locker said it was a dicey thing, waiting for the instant between peak and trough to see if we were finally aligned right. If Mama had raised Smarden, I'd have begged to give up before we were even out of the harbor. Listeners, let me paint you this picture. A 20-foot sailboat, almost floundering in the storm surge, being driven straight towards a nearly uniform and unforgiving cliff face. The wind is screaming. The rain is lashing horizontal like icy knives against any exposed skin, when suddenly these navigational beacons align, and for a split second at the very bottom of a wave, there is an opening in the cliff, just large enough for a small craft to soar through. But they'd have to time it perfectly. Too high in the wave, and it's a deadly dash against the cliff face. Too low, and their keel would be destroyed, leaving them floundering in whatever awaited them inside. Thunder, lightning, the roar of the ocean, the lights align. Mad holds their breath. Locker strains on the wheel to keep them on course. Another wave, and then silence. As Locker tells the tale, it was like entering another world. Instantly, the cacophony of the storm ceased, and were it not for the 10 or so foot drop onto still water, it would have been a pleasure cruise from then on inside the cove. Mads talks about seeing bait fish along the surface of the water so thick you could almost walk along their backs. Despite the darkness of the storm, there was light all around them. A warm yellow glow from the signal lights and the distinctive aqua bioluminescent plankton from the small wake made by the belligerent hull. But also, curiously, a glow along the walls of the cliff that seemed to rhythmically pulse. Once to the center of the sizable space, Mads and Locker set about preparing their fishing gear. Looking around them, it seemed they could drop their nets and trawl, first just across the space, and if that yielded anything, they'd planned on circling the area. As they pulled their nets through the calm water, they both marveled at the amazing color display by the plankton, remarking on the sheer number of baitfish they saw. Not too concerned with bycatch, as the team was using a specially tailored net for Corsetti, they still began to debate the return on investment to fish for more mundane catch. After they had secured their prize, they decided. Once the marker buoys began to bob, signifying that their net was filled with something, they dropped anchor and set to the laborious struggle of hauling in the catch by hand, since the belligerent hull's winch had broken in the storm. Hand over hand, back-breaking work. Slowly, the bulk of their catch began to show through the clear water in the lights hanging from their vessel. Sure enough, Corsetti. Mads and Locker described the discovery as nothing short of magical. Erupting into hollers of joy, the two embraced and danced across the deck before working on carefully handling their lively catch. Now, listeners, some of you may already be aware that a legal Corsetti catch is 12 foot from tip to tail, even with the majority of their first haul being juveniles far under that length. Mads and Locker soon began to fill the belligerent hull's hold. Net after net they hauled in, exclaiming as keeper after keeper went into the live hold. To those of you worried, Corsetti are a very hardy creature, and a little something like manhandling in a net isn't going to do more than ruffle their scales. To this point, and this seems like a story of reckless behavior being rewarded with incredible profit. And certainly, Mads and Locker made an absolute windfall once they returned to port. Not that either have shared even an inkling of how they were able to get back out of the cove. The real mystery starts at the fillet board. Locker, already a few Corsetti into the rhythm of skinning and butchering, finds one that is a bit more portly than the rest. Not particularly thinking anything of it, Locker slides their fillet knife along the Corsetti's belly and dumps out its internal organs. Useful ones in the bucket, the rest over the side of the dock for the various sharks and drakes and primal drones to enjoy. Except, as Locker brushes the thing's intestines and stomach aside, they notice the stomach is full to burst with something. Idly curious, Locker touches their knife to the stomach lining and it splits easily, spilling out the contents onto Locker's workspace. Mads says that the normal sounds of the harbor were split by Locker's horrified shrieking. Locker begs claim to a little more composure than that, but listeners, I am sure there was screaming involved. Because what spilled forth from the Corsetti's guts were the partially digested remains of 21 human hands, feet, legs, and other dismembered body parts. A skull clattered to the wood of the dock, one remaining eyeball staring straight into Locker's soul, lingering skin only slightly paler than Mad's own face. And they both knew their payday had just become much more complicated. By the time they had finished processing the rest of their catch, only then calling for authorities, Locker and Mads had uncorsettied the assorted remains of at least 57 individuals. Now listeners, I don't have a complete list of the body parts found, but the majority of dismembered bits seemed to be hands and feet, with a smattering of other limbs and some torsos. Noticeably, anything that was useful in identifying a body, fingerprints, birthmarks, tattoos, body modifications. There were dozens of cultist tattoos found, other distinctive designs that surely would have turned heads, modifications with maker's marks, all hacked for some reason from their owner's form. Listeners, I'm assuming to prevent identification of bodies. Locker and Mads turned the bodies over to a carcer team who specialized in identifying the bodies of unknown final death victims. And a source of mine says that immediately there were hits in the missing persons files. Not shockingly, listeners, but Carcer has kept their own investigation into these disembodied limbs under tight wrap. Apparently they agreed on both a preservation of Corvetti stock, as well as respecting the Mads and Locker rights to the fishing spot, to keep the location secret as well. In any case, what my informant has been able to tell me is this. The body parts are from at least 57 individuals, though some people were represented by multiple parts. Based on things like state of decomposition and design of certain tattoos, the parts are from a stretch of time of at least 8 months, but likely longer based on bones that were found completely devoid of flesh. Aside from the obvious, these were bits of people that could be used to identify them. There seems to be no real connection or pattern. Cultist tattoos were very common, but as a fraction of the rest of the bits, not a particularly large percentage. Carcer spokespeople claim that due to the delicate nature of some of the active investigations involved in this case, they cannot speak to specifics. However, they have informed the press that these bits are linking missing person cases across Mirhanan. Who, dear listeners, is behind this? What could possibly have led to so many body parts being dumped over what appears to be a steady schedule in this near inaccessible body of water? It would be one thing to suspect a shady scheme or political scandal of corruption if they were from one specific area, but it is a global grab bag of body parts. The easy solution would be cult activity, but then why so many cultist tattoos? And on top of that, so many different cults were represented. There's nothing that stands out as more common, or even absent. What's even weirder, honestly, at this scale, is that all identifiable cuts to the parts appear to be done by hand with a cleaver type of blade. No magic, no saws, regular knives. Lots of different ones, too. Something this large should be dripping with clues, with a serial killer signature, with a specific weapon probably called Soulbringer or something, at least. But no, the unremarkable, non-uniform, completely mundane butchering leads nowhere. So, dear listeners, what do you think? Drop me a line, message me a bottle, and remember, the world is large. I will continue to check my nets for more stories of the weird, dangerous, and unbelievable to bring you the best show that I can. Until then, be safe, be observant, and die loud. This has been the Trawler.